First of all, Cory, we're excited to have you join us on the Two-Man Advantage podcast today, and we're excited to talk some Boston Celtics basketball with you today.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to talk about it. I'm excited for the season. It's about a month away. It's hard to believe.
Well, thanks for doing a live version of our show today. We're excited to have you on in this format of the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on. No screw-ups, right?
Well, that's the magic of live TV, right?
Exactly. No screw-ups, no swearing either.
I'll try my best. No, I'm kidding. So when we look at what happened this offseason, obviously the Celtics had a big free agent get in Al Horford. They dabbled in trying to get Kevin Durant this fall. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on what the signing of for the team and for a franchise that really didn't really have much success when it comes to securing big-time free agents, despite the allure of what the history of Boston Celtics basketball actually means.
Yeah, no. Again, thank you for having me on. And this was kind of it's a big summer for the Celtics. They almost landed two big fish. With Kevin Durant, he was pretty much second in line coming here. It says a lot about the franchise and where it's at and where it's going. OKC pretty much backed off during the proceedings, and eventually it came down to the Celtics and Golden State. And if it wasn't for Jerry West calling out some of his Jedi mind tricks to get Durant to go to Golden State, who knows? I mean, Durant and Horford could have been suiting up for the Celtics. But yeah, again, speaking on those free agency woes, I guess, for lack of a better word, it's kind of twofold. Free agency as a whole is a bit overstated. It's still fairly new. I think it got started pretty much in the late '80s. But if you look at the all-time greats, like the top 50 players or so, and you think of how many of those top 50 players left in their prime years, there's not many. It's like Moses Malone. He played for a number of different teams. Shaq O'Neal, obviously, he left Orlando in excruciating circumstances for the Magic. And then, depending on how you feel about Steve Nash, he had a great late career resurgence. If you want to lump him in top 50, he left the Mavericks at age 30 when his body was supposedly breaking down, and he kind of found a second life in Phoenix. And then when you look currently, there's not too many guys that leave in their primes. LeBron's obviously the biggest example, but he eventually came back to Cleveland and won them a title. I guess you could say the same thing about Chris Bosh and obviously Durant now. But there's not too many key superstar, top 15 players at a time, leaving via free agency. And then with all that said, with myself just having said all that about the Celtics' lack of free agent success, they've had, a checkered history. Young guys don't really want to come to Boston. It's cold. The nightlife. I enjoy the nightlife. I live here, but again, I'm not a multi-millionaire athlete playing in a big city, so I can kind of understand that. And so getting a guy like Al Horford, who might not be in his peak prime years, but a player like that who keeps himself in great condition, very smart, very cerebral type of player. He's 30 years old, so his signing for the Celtics pretty monumental in that sense. In past years, they've pretty much the big free agents they've gotten have been guys like Rasheed Wallace and Jermaine O'Neal, kind of past the prime guys, and then really solid role players like James Posey, Eddie House, guys like that.
And tell me, what do you think he brings to the team from a veteran perspective? How does he make the team better from a leadership perspective and on the court?
Yeah, it's going to be huge. I went back and read an article on the former great site Grantland, and they did an article on Al Horford and just how good of a player he is, that you don't really notice how good he is, how smart he is, and then how great of a leader he was for those Hawks teams under Mike Budenholzer. Just considering he played under Mike Woodson's pretty vanilla offensive scheme for a number of years, and then getting a new coach and a new system, and then playing with different players like Paul Millsap and Dennis Schroeder and Kyle Korver, guys like that. You think there's a learning curve, but for Horford, he kind of came in and set the tone for Budenholzer's Spursian, San Antonio Spursian pass-happy offensive scheme. He really fit in, and then on a defensive side too, he can guard a number of positions. He can switch on the pick and roll. He definitely fills a need as a Celtics rim protector. Amir Johnson was good at that last year, but you don't really want to count on him. So his impact is going to be all around this year for the Celtics, offense, defense, from a leadership standpoint. And I mean, if on a basic level, you bring in Horford and you take out Jared Sullinger, it's a huge win right there.
Tell me about what you think about the Celtics draft philosophy this year. Obviously, they tried to trade away their draft picks to get a superstar player. So tell me about Jalen Brown and what he brings to the team, along with the rest of the Celtics overall draft class.
Yeah, and I'm one of the few guys that's actually in. I was in favor of the Jalen Brown pick. I liked it. Outside of Simmons and Ingram, there really was no surefire number three guy. Buddy Hield was a good college player, but I don't think his athleticism is going to translate into a star type of player. Same thing to a certain extent with Jamal Murray, and you never really want to draft on need, but Celtics backcourt right now, there's a lot of minutes being divvied out to Isaiah Thomas, Avery Bradley, and Marcus Smart. And then, guys like Jalen Brown are becoming the big need in the offseason. Guy like Marvin Williams for the Hornets kind of had a late career resurgence just by finding his niche as a small forward, power forward combo. And Celtics last year, they struggled mightily once Jay Crowder went down, who's really filled that need as the combo forward. You get a guy like Jalen Brown who, he had a bit of a disappointing year in college, but in his defense, the system he played in was, slow it down, traditional two big offense. Really didn't get out in transition to play to his strengths. So you get a guy who's 19 years old. He's already physically NBA ready, which you can't really say about too many guys. He's a mature player who obviously is going to have to mature more just by getting NBA reps, but the maturity is something you don't have to deal with. And then Austin Ainge, the head of player development for the Celtics, he was actually on CLNS Radio, who I contribute to, the Celtics Beat podcast earlier this summer, and he kind of alluded to the fact that the Celtics were in on trades. They're always active, but the trades weren't there. The return overhaul was not going to be enough. So there was rumored trades for guys like Nerlens Noel from Philly, which didn't make any sense at all. And although I really like Jimmy Butler, the Celtics do too, they would have gladly have traded certain combinations of players and picks for him, but it came down to Bradley, Crowder, and a number 3 for Jimmy Butler. And I'm not saying Marcus Smart is Jimmy Butler or he'll be him in a couple of years, but the Celtics feel that Marcus Smart can kind of replicate a lot of what Butler does, and they have a guy in Crowder who kind of does the same thing. And adding, a Jalen Brown at the number 3 spot gives you financial flexibility from the rookie scale. You have him under control for pretty much 4 years, and a chance to develop from within. So there really wasn't.
Talk to me about.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no. Guys can improve the jump shot. That's what's killing Jalen Brown at this point is jump shot. Like a guy like Kawhi Leonard, same body type, was a horrible shooter in college, and now he's one of the best.
And talk to me about Danny Ainge and what you think he has this team in terms of building perspective, whether you think he has them headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I think I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I agree 100% with what he's been doing and how he's been going about this process. Again, he had the ultimate rocket boost to rebuilding the team thanks to the Nets. whenever the Nets are in town, I know Danny's he's Mormon, so he doesn't really drink, but he should buy the entire Nets coaching staff and management beers all around. They gave the Celtics a number of picks in the future. When the Nets really just had one good year with Pierce,
they
and
won
KG.
that trade.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna go down as one of the all-time coups. And there's actually been thought of or thinking that Danny Ainge did so well in that trade that other teams are kind of afraid or at least hesitant to deal with him. And I'm not sure about that. But he made the right choice of coach. He kind of went out in left field with that at the time, going in the college route, getting Brad Stevens. But that's obviously worked out. And then just capitalizing on like afterthought players or guys that were kind of cast-offs, like Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Evan Turner. The Brooklyn picks are the real get right there. That's putting them on track to becoming a title contender this year.
And tell me, how important do you think Brad Stevens' development as a coach has been to the development of the overall team? And you had mentioned before that Brad Stevens wasn't necessarily the popular pick coming from college, but he certainly proven his worth during his time in Boston. And finally, on this subject, how important do you think a long-term deal was from Stevens' perspective, getting that 6-year deal, knowing that he would have to turn the Celtics around?
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge adjustment for him going from college to the pros. And in that first year, not many people watched. It was pretty bad, but he struggled a little bit here and there. It's tough learning the pro game coming from college. Guys in the pros, obviously, a lot of them are making more money than you, but you really need to get a rotation down, figure out lineups, figure out who plays best with who. Obviously, all the guys want to start, but it's up to you to make that decision with the help from Danny Ainge and assistant coaches, but it ultimately falls on you. And he's gone. Obviously, the roster has improved, but from that first year to where he is now, just the confidence that he has is, tenfold, way more now. Speaking on that extension, I think it was a little bit overblown, at least here in Boston. People were worried that if the Celtics didn't get a big star, he was going to leave. He was, posturing for Duke's spot once Coach K left. I don't think that was ever the case. He, made his intention to come here after KG and Pierce had left in a clear rebuilding effort, taking this team from the ground up and starting something new. For a franchise that's so historically steeped as the Celtics are. So now he has the players. He has young guys like Marcus Smart, Avery Bradley, guys in their primes, plus a leader and a great all-around sort of chameleon, for lack of a better word, type of player like Al Horford, who can really adapt his game to any situation. So he's in a great situation, just as the Celtics franchise is.
And tell me, why do you think people should be excited about Boston Celtics basketball this year?
Number of reasons. Al Horford, just on that, he was down in Atlanta for his entire career, and they never missed the playoffs when he was there. That's saying something. But I think fans are going to see at least more from a nationalist perspective, and just how professional sports is so huge here in Boston. Fans are going to really see just how good he is. Again, speaking on Brad Stevens, get to see him develop, utilize better players, better roster. There's actually some cohesion on the team for once. When he came in, they were constantly trading and dropping, and they really just needed name tags back a few years ago. But now it's a lot of the same guys. Add in Jalen Brown and Al Horford, plus Gerald Green on the end of the bench who can provide a little offense for them. But it's really just seeing internal development from guys like Marcus Smart, Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, to see if he can put up another historic season like he did a year ago. And another thing to watch, to be excited for, is just how good defense is going to be. I believe last year they finished around 4th in defensive rating. That was with Sullinger, who was pretty good, but he was out of shape the whole year. Bringing in Al Horford, Jalen Brown's already, physically ready to be that swingman defender that teams really need and the teams really want. They're going to get after it defensively. They might be the best defensive team, at least ratings wise this season.
And tell me, where do you think Boston will finish in the Eastern Conference as compared to how far you think they can go, just looking at them from a preseason perspective?
Yeah, if I had to pick right now, I'd say they're the number 2 seed in the East. I think respect has to be given to the Cavaliers for what they did last year. Kyrie Irving's still only like 24 years old somehow. He seems like he's been in the league for a long time. Kevin Love for all of his sports and detractions as a player. He's still pretty young, and he can play through the regular season and provide them enough. It'll be interesting to see what LeBron does. He's obviously the question and answer for the Cavs. He's entering a different part of his career, at least you think so. With the amount of tread on his tires, he's never really been hurt. It'll be interesting to see how they use him again in the regular season after not a really grueling playoffs, but a tough series against Golden State, where he really carried the team. But I would have the Cavs number 1, Celtics number 2, and then after that, there's a lot of good teams, but a lot of question marks. Detroit made a lot of improvements, and they're on the right track. Toronto was there last year, but if you look at their offseason, they didn't really make any notable moves, at least. But they have continuity at least in the Eastern Conference, and they've been there before to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I really like the Celtics' chances, and it's going to be tough, obviously, making the finals, let alone winning, getting there. That's hard enough. But I expect them, to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and from there, it's hard to predict.
And my final question for you has to do with what 3 things do you think have to break right for the Celtics for them to have a successful season?
Was what 3 things?
Yeah, well, your top 3 things.
Top three. I think they need so under the Brad Stevens era, and really since Ray Allen has left, since he left via free agency to Miami, Celtics have really struggled as an outside shooting team. They don't need to be one of the best, but they can't be in the bottom third or bottom quarter of the league as a 3-point shooting team. That really needs to improve this year. They need to bring it. That's something that's really been taken for granted under the Brad Stevens era, especially last year, is that their effort was maximum all the time. And for them to get back to the it's 51.5 according to Vegas over under for victories. If they want to get to that 52, they're gonna have to bring that maximum effort on a nightly basis, even when they're playing in Milwaukee in February. And lastly, I think they need to sort out the minutes. So like last year, there was a ton of depth, and you can say that again this year. It took the team, I want to say they were 18-18 last year through 36 games, and there wasn't really cohesiveness. There's a little bit of questioning on roles and minutes. It would be good if they can really just get out from the start and establish roles and get a rotation going. Kelly Olynyk's going to be out to start the year. So they'll have to do some maneuvering, but that's a big part of just getting out to a good start and kind of coasting and getting through the regular season.
And just one follow-up on that. In terms of the core and having sort of a core of players now, how big do you think that is in terms of establishing consistency early on in the season and throughout the duration of the season as well?
Yeah, it's very important. that's why you kind of see the teams that don't make a lot of changes and that were close last year or the prior years. And oftentimes they're the ones that have the best starts and they have the better regular seasons. Last year was actually, I guess you could say that was the first year where they had a full training camp together, because if you go back to prior year, that was the team that, Isaiah came over in the trade deadline, Jay Crowder and all those guys. They're all new, so they're all just playing together, pretty much, just having fun. Last year was really the first year, and even then, they really needed to sort out minutes. This year is going to be huge, just getting that rotation set. I mean, even if you look at like prior Eastern Conference Finals teams like Toronto last year and Indiana, when they had like Paul George and Roy Hibbert was playing center. Those teams, failed in the first round or the second round of the playoffs before getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. So just having those playoff reps is huge.
So, Cory, we want to thank you for doing this live edition of the Two-Man Advantage podcast. It was a lot of fun, buddy, and we look forward to talking to you throughout the duration of the season. So do me a favor and tell me where people can find your work, buddy.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be on. Thanks for having me on, Kevin. So I work for CLNS Radio. We have our own locker room reporter, Jared Weiss. I've actually filled in a couple of times, done a few games. He does an excellent job. So Larry H. Russell has Celtics Beat podcast for any NBA diehards or Celtics diehards looking for a good podcast, sort of getting away from the mainstream talk radio. And I contribute to CLNS Radio's written work, post-game show, fill in a little bit here on the game coverage. And you can find me at it's Cory Prescott 7 at CoryPrescott 7 on Twitter.
Fantastic, Cory. Thanks for your time and for joining us during this live edition of the Two-Man Advantage podcast. Have a good night, buddy, and have a successful season covering the Celtics, okay?
Hey, anytime, Kevin. Thanks a lot.
Have a great day, bud. Bye-bye.
See ya.